Will you join me in prayer? We give thanks to you, loving God, for your presence that is here with us right here and right now. And we claim your presence in this message, that my words will be your words and thoughts will be your thoughts, that our hearts will be opened, our minds will be open to your way in our lives. And for this we are grateful as we claim it so. Amen. So it seems that a descendant of the Pharaoh was about to die, and he gathered to him his pastor, his doctor, and his attorney. And he gave each one of them an envelope with $30,000 in cash. And he said, please, when the time comes, the day of my funeral, please stick that into the coffin for me so it can go on with me into the afterlife. And so when I'm reincarnated, I will have this money. So they took the cash, of course, and the time did come, and he made his transition, and they came to the funeral, and they buried him. And afterwards, the minister broke down, his pastor broke down and started to cry. And he said, I'm so sorry to tell you folks this, but I was really concerned about his soul. So I took 10,000 of it and I donated it to an orphanage so that this good work would go on in his name. Obviously, he wasn't a Unity minister. The doctor said, oh, well, I have a confession too. You know, what he made his transition from, what he died from was something that was so rare that I took $15,000 of the money and gave it to the charity that's doing research on this disease. And the attorney said, I'm disgusted with both of you. How dare you not honor his wishes? He said, I wrote a check for $30,000 for the full amount and put it in the envelope to honor his wishes. And when the rest of you get it, let me know. So today we're talking about your spiritual DNA, and that's accessing the essence of our being. And I don't know how many of you watch this program on PBS, Finding Your Roots, but it's one that I enjoy very much. And the gentleman, Henry Louis Gates, examines the family trees of celebrities. And when he's doing this, he gives this oral history then to these celebrities. And most of these celebrities have very little idea of what their lineage is. Some of them have an idea that possibly they came from a certain country or continent, but they really don't know. And he gives these wonderful, detailed as he can, accounts of who the ancestors are. And he tells the story, and the stories unravel about the possibility of the things that these ancestors did as well, what kind of people they might have been. And part of it is projection, because we're creating a story based on a time, based on the situations of a time. But part of it is an understanding, an aha for the receiver as they start seeing similarities in their own lives and their own personalities. They start to get these deep connections about where they came from. And you know, so much about being a human is wondering why something happened, isn't it? And so it's a small snippet answer to some of the whys in our life. Oh, I may be this way because my ancestors are that way. And we explain this process very often through DNA. And I practiced all week how to pronounce that word, and I'm not even going to try it here. Not even going to try it. Because you all know what DNA is. I mean, we've all heard about it. We know enough about it to know that it is the gene carries our genes down. And that it comes from our ancestors. The attributes of our ancestors are in the DNA, in the cells of the body, and it's passed down from generation to generation. And everyone's DNA is unique, unless you have an identical twin. But for the most part, everyone has a very unique DNA. So you would have a DNA, and your sister or brother may have many of the same traits, but not all of the same traits. And it's something that we're exploring in science. It's extremely exciting right now. In our DNA, oftentimes is the code for our physical attributes, certainly our physical, like our eye color, our hair color, sometimes about how tall we're going to be, what our body shape's going to be. That's all sort of in our DNA. There's also thought or study into that sometimes parts of our intelligence is passed down through our DNA, as our personality, as our characteristics of that. But that also has to do with how we nurture what's in our DNA, because we may have specific personality traits, or we may have specific intelligence traits, but how we develop that by and large depends on, or is determined by us, not necessarily by the DNA. Sort of like the DNA is a springboard to that. Now, we know that in this, we've also talked about how genetically disease is passed from one generation to the next. And it was so interesting when Myrtle Fillmore had her great healing. What she learned in that was that she does not inherit illness, that she is a child of God, that she does not inherit illness. And it's something that we have to understand, that just because there's a predisposition possibly in our DNA to have an illness does not mean we will ever get that illness. Now, did you know we have a spiritual DNA too? I like to refer it to our divine natural appointment. And our spiritual DNA, we learned this lesson, comes from actually the first two principles that we teach in unity. And the first principle is that God is absolute good, everywhere present. That is where we come from. That is the basis of our spiritual DNA, is absolute good. The second part of that is the second principle, which is human beings have a spark of divinity within them. They have the Christ Spirit within them. The very essence is of God, and therefore they were also inherently good. So this is like really incredible stuff to know, is that the basis of your spiritual DNA is that you are born into goodness. You are born to be good, absolute good. And we are born to bless this world. Now, sometimes it doesn't feel like we're blessing the world very much, and it certainly sometimes doesn't feel like the world's blessing us. But as we tap more and more into our spiritual DNA, we start receiving the blessings in a clearer fashion, and we start blessing the world in a clearer fashion. I wanted to explore a little bit about our spiritual DNA. We are the spark of divinity, the Christ Spirit. Now, these are the incarnating principles of God that are in us. As we are born into this world, as we're developing, even in gestation, we are the incarnating principle of God, the perfect word of God, an ideal of God. And it unfolds as we are born. And we're blessed to have this divine standard as a part of our life. You know, so much of how I was raised, and possibly how you were raised, if you were raised in Christianity, was about original sin. We were born into original sin, that our nature as men, as man, I should say men, as human, is a sinful nature. And that was stressed very much throughout Christianity. And in recent years, our theologians like Matthew Fox have articulated original blessing, how we are born blessed, that our original, the original cell of our body that created who we are, is blessed. We are blessed. We are born into a blessed existence. This also tells us, though, that of the spark of divinity, that we have always existed. Our souls have always existed. So it has always been and always shall be. The interesting thing about that also is everything about our body, every bit of our body is born from the stars, from the original Big Bang. Everything that is about us physically came out of that moment, came out of the moment of evolution that has continued down. We don't realize that sometimes. We don't think about that usually in daily life, that, we've always been here as spirit. But not only that, what we are, what we look at in the mirror today, is a result of something that happened billions and billions and billions of years ago. Also in our spiritual DNA is that we are the essence of God. And as spirit, we are the infinite, invisible essence of all life. Since God, Spirit, is everywhere, equally present in the universe. So there is no separation between us and God. In fact, God is merely acting through you, as you. You are the manifestation of God. So there is no God pulling the strings over here and you are the puppet. No, it's quite different than that. You are merely manifesting and acting out your godness as God comes through you. There is only God expressing as you. Meister Eckhart says, God expects but one thing of you. That is, you should come out of yourself insofar as you are a created being, and let God be God in you. Do you ever catch yourself being human? Yeah. You ever catch yourself noticing the boundaries that you're putting up, the barriers that you're putting up? The barriers are there for a good reason. It's good, it's safe, it is healthy as an adult living in this world to have a certain amount of boundaries. They're there to protect our bodies. They're there to protect our lives and our livelihoods. And but in the same token, because of what we've experienced in the past, sometimes we put up these big roadblocks or these big walls that say, please do not penetrate this. Please do not make me feel good about anything. Please don't make me love you. When in fact we're all walking around wanting love. And we're all walking around wanting to give love, truly deep down. And I understand why we don't do that sometimes. I mean, I know in my own life, I've been hurt. I've been vulnerable. I've been betrayed. So it's very easy to put up the walls. And the walls are also temporary. We can take down the walls. We can open doors. We are inherently good. We express the law of being, which is the law of all good. There is but one presence and one power, God the good. Now, we have to accept that good. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But from this, our human DNA, it's a genetic code that's passed down from our ancestors. It determines our body and some of our intelligence and personality characteristics. And it's the seed of human gifts. Oftentimes within our DNA locks the seed of our gifts and our talents. Our spiritual DNA, well, it's inherent to all beings. We access our innate divinity, Christ's nature, as we allow it to. As we allow it, invite the Christ nature in to be the primary source from which we live. And it is the seed of our purpose. It accesses our daimon, which was a term that I remember reading once in a James Hillman book. James Hillman was a wonderful Jungian psychologist. And he talked about our diamond, which is our inner spirit, our inspiring force. And that each of us has an inspiring force inside of us if we allow it to come forward. And when we combine that with the seeds of our human gifts, oh my, it's really incredible. Jesus experienced this. There have been many other very accomplished and famous people in the world who put together the seed of their purpose, that inspiring force with the seed of their human gifts. And I want to say they transposed, but that isn't the word. They transcended. I know there was a trans in there. They transcended what is normal, what is usual for accomplishment in humanity. So the gifts of our spiritual DNA, Jesus told us his peace. I leave you with my peace, I give unto you, not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. We get peace from accessing our spiritual DNA. We get joy. I've said these things to you so that my joy may be in you and your joy may be made complete. And then also we get love. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. So have I loved you. So how do we access our spiritual DNA? Well, one thing is to remember that you're accessing it right now. You have made a choice to come here and to be present in this service. You come here to allow yourself to be edified, to be uplifted, to the possibility of your heart and your mind to expand, to accept people into your lives, possibly to receive a hug, to get loved, to give love, to receive support, to give support. You are making choices to learn and grow right now, each one of you. And you make those choices as the day's events unfold. As you make plans in your life, you're making these choices. We choose faith and practice acceptance of our goodness. It's been interesting to me because accepting goodness has been one of my challenges in life. That's just sort of like the thing that I get to work on, that God has given me, because there was a point in my life, in my early life, where I would not accept my good. Good was outside of me. Good was everyone else, everything else, but it wasn't me. And it's so interesting when I meet people who have never experienced that, because it's like, really? What's that like? That's so cool. I think the two of us could do a wonderful workshop together, because one could teach how to accept, and the other one could just teach how to help the people to accept. But part of this is choosing that I'm going to act in faith. That despite the appearances, no matter how horrible they may seem, I'm going to act in faith. And by acting in faith, I'm going to take care of myself in this. I'm going to do what's good for me in this. And I'm going to practice and accepting my goodness. And my goodness is taking care of me. My goodness is showing up and opening my heart to the world. My goodness is bringing people into my life that are healthy, that are supporting me, that are loving me. That's my goodness. And then we also grow in awareness. This is another way to access our spiritual DNA. And in that is we're remembering that we are a part of creation and we are also a part of eternity. That while this body is a temporary vehicle that we get to move around with on this earth, the Spirit was before and the Spirit goes with us after. This is just vacation for the Spirit. It's the cruise. How else do we grow in awareness? By Reverend Vi, her famous words, think about what you're thinking about when you're not thinking about anything. Be aware of what you're thinking about. Be aware of your thoughts. Know that what you're putting into the world, you're receiving back. And we deepen our consciousness, opening our hearts and minds. So when Henry Louis Gates does your family tree, and you learn all these wonderful things about what your family did, has done, where they came from, what kind of people they were, and you go, oh yes, I know this. You will also know something else about them. That they and their spiritual DNA was a part of their life and their life makeup. And just like you, they were unfolding, you are unfolding, and you are constantly unfolding. And you are a gift to our world. Remember that. Will you join me in prayer? We give thanks to you, loving God, for reminding us that our life is a gift. We thank you, dear God, for every affirmation that comes our way that affirms our life, that we are lovable and loving. We thank you for all the relationships that we experience, knowing that each one of them is teaching us something on some level. Whether that experience is pleasant or not, dear God, we know you are there and that you are giving us the strength, the courage, and the faith to go on. And we thank you, dear God, for loving us so much to give us this wonderful experience. We claim this in the name and the nature of the living Christ. Amen.
Thank you for joining us, and let's stay connected and grow in spirit. We are on Facebook. Search for Unity Church of El Cajon and follow us and like our posts. You can reach us on YouTube at Unity Church of El Cajon. Please subscribe to our channel, watch our videos, and leave comments which can help us improve. We are on the web at unityofelcajon.org. Email or call our church office to receive our weekly newsletters, which lists all of our activities and opportunities to learn and grow together.